Hey guys, so this is going to be another episode of Skank Planet with your host, Skylar Rose. I am going to go and get my notes, so give me just 1 second, and we are going to get into it. So today is not going to be a rant today because unfortunately I'm fucking exhausted and I really don't even feel like I have the time to even rant about anything. So today is just going to be more of a review of some notes that my therapist gave me. And just to go into that. Right. So let's get into it, right? The first thing I wanted to talk about is personal boundaries. So on my recent session, I think that's something that my therapist spoke to me about. Don't really know exactly how the fuck our conversation got there. But we was talking about how sometimes a person might feel like someone might invade their space. Boundaries essentially is limitations and restrictions that we may put up in a relationship, and that can be with coworkers, family, friends, acquaintances, just any intimate or non-intimate relationship that you might pursue. Right. So let's get into it. So there are different types of so there's different types of boundaries. A person who always keeps others at a distance, whether that may be emotionally, physically, or as otherwise. So there are certain types of boundaries or types of boundaries, how to describe them, right? So there's three different types. We have rigid boundaries, porous boundaries, and healthy boundaries. So for rigid boundaries, it's basically where you avoid any sense of intimacy, you're unlikely to ask for help, you have very few relationships, and apparently you seem detached even with romantic partners, and keep others at a distance to avoid possibility of rejection. I can kind of relate with a little bit of this. I do feel that I do put up a wall in a front because I do have a lot of insecurities. And sometimes I do this because I am very fearful of being judged. So I put up this like rigid boundary so that people can't get really necessarily close to me. Right? So I can relate to that in some shape or form. I feel like I will ask for help if I need it, but sometimes I do get a little nervous. Very protective of personal information. This one's more of my mom. Shout out, love you, mom. Basically, I would keep my personal information to myself. I think that anything that belongs to you or is for you shouldn't really be flamboyantly just being going around, just like telling everyone and making it everyone's business. I do think that there is probably a healthy way to approach this scenario, but I'm very secretive about a lot of personal information because I feel like that is my business. And personal information can go from things like, from your social security to like, I don't know, my sexual health downstairs. I think that these are just little things that I would keep to myself. And these are just personal information I just don't choose to share. Another type of personal boundary is porous, right? So, like when you have hair and hair is like extremely porous, right? So that means it just takes in everything, or in some cases lets go of everything, right? And I think that's just a more fitting way to describe this, because porous boundaries is, as it sounds, a person is just overly zealous in sharing everything, overly too much of personal information, too open about your emotions, too open about just literally just about anything. I don't feel like I overshare sometimes. I do feel like sometimes I might overshare, like if I'm obsessed with something like piano or chess. Um, so yes, I think that that is something that's a little realistic. However, I don't see that in everyone. So we're gonna leave that. Another one I've learned from my therapist, it's called healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries is where you value your own opinions. Never be made to feel like your opinions are invalid. Your opinions are is just as important as the next person. This is something that my aunt taught me a lot. I used to be very like restrictive on how like other people was feeling. Sometimes I would think about my own emotions, my own thoughts without really thinking about how does the other person feel. And my aunt helped me to realize that, where she taught me that yes, your opinions are valid and you should stand in your truth, but it doesn't mean that you should invalidate and make other people feel unheard. And that's one thing that she taught me a lot too. So love you, auntie. Doesn't comprise values for others. Again, similar with this whole idea of just stand in your own truth. That's where you just don't comprise values for others. You stand on yourself. Shares personal information in an appropriate way. Does not over or undershare. I think that's something that I might have learned a little bit from, I guess, friends. Friends help me to be more open about how I feel about myself, how I'm feeling, my emotions physically. If I'm feeling sick, not feeling sick, they help me to be a little bit more open. I was very reserved, I guess, in that department. Knows personal wants and needs and can communicate them effectively. Unfortunately, this one's going to have to go out a shout out to my cousin. This one, I am a bitch when it fucking comes to ordering things for myself. If I have anything that I wanted and I completely got the wrong order, I am so deathly afraid to get what I want. She taught me a long time ago that if you're going to be spending your money, you're going to be investing some sort of time and energy into something, you should get what you want for it. If you're going to be spending your money for it, get what you ask for. You know what I'm saying? Why spend your money if you're just going to accept like anything less? And so she would always like push me to go up to the front and explain, oh, this is not how I wanted it, or I got the wrong order. So yeah, I guess that's like a healthy boundary I learned from my cousin. Accepting when others say no to them. I've never had a problem when someone tells me no. I might be disappointed, but I feel like everyone is disappointed sometimes. So I'm not going to get into that. It just doesn't make sense to me to do. So let's continue, right, guys? So most people have a mix of different boundary types. For example, someone could have healthy boundaries at work, porous boundaries in romantic relationships, and a mix of all three types with their family. The appropriateness of boundaries depends heavily on setting. What's appropriate to stay out with your friends might not be appropriate when you're at work. Some cultures have different expectations when it comes to boundaries. This is interesting. I like that. So what are personal boundaries and types of boundaries, right? So what we just talked about earlier is basically how do we describe them, right? So for instance, the first boundary we're going to get into that is called physical boundaries. This is physical boundaries may be violated if someone touches you or when you don't want to, or when they invade your personal space, and refer to personal touch and physical touch, personal space and physical touch, something like that, right? Yes. So personal boundaries is basically as simple as it says, the personal space, personal touch. So how does this relate to the traits of it? Could it be porous or rigid? Rigid would be something like you don't want someone to touch you at all. You don't want someone to hold your hands, to tap your shoulder, being like a feet next to you. That's rigid. Porous is someone who I feel like is a little bit too wanting too much touch and can make usually the other person more, I guess, more uneasy or uncomfortable. And I would imagine that if they were having a healthy boundary with this, that they'd typically be okay with general day-to-day touching, general day-to-day like exposure of their own personal space to others. Another type of personal boundary that we've learned today is emotional and intellectual. This is where you respect where a person refers to a person's feelings. This is healthy boundaries. Emotional boundaries include limitations on what one to share and what not to share. Intellectual refers to thoughts and ideas. These boundaries are violated when someone dismisses or belittles another person's thoughts or ideas. This is where my aunt had taught me not to do, and that I need to learn to start respecting other people's opinions and as well as my own, and learn to have proper etiquette when it comes to having an argument or a conversation. I learned that I learned that from her. Emotional boundaries are when someone criticizes, belittles, or invalidates another person's feelings. This is something that you gradually learn, especially with intellectual boundaries. Sexual boundaries, I don't need to talk about this. This is very self-explanatory. Unwanted and wanted touch. Material boundaries, some things you just would be okay with someone touching, such as your bag, your purse, maybe your credit card, and there'll be things that you're not okay with letting people touch as well in that list of items. And time boundaries. Refer to the person how they use their time. Time boundaries are violated when another person demands too much of another person's time. This I've never experienced too much, but my idea, I guess, is like if a friend is consistently just like not acknowledging that you need time to devote to work or schoolwork, or you want to devote more time to your family, and they're consistently taking up your time by consistently asking you to go out here, go out there, and it's taking a lot of your time. So this is an overview of basically personal boundaries and basically the different traits that might come with these boundaries. I think that this was a great segue onto these different types of boundaries, because I think that these help you as a person to grow. I do think that they help you to be a little more introspective on how you're choosing to set up your boundaries. And it really allows you to analyze yourself in different situations. It can also really help you to understand just, how you are in different scenarios and how things feel for you, right? So maybe for you at work, it might be more cordial for you to be more rigid boundaries about maybe sexual boundaries, right? Because these are things that you're not going to want to talk about at work, right? And maybe you'll be more porous, have a porous trait when it comes to maybe more intellectual boundaries. Maybe you will be more porous in the sense that you like to express a lot about your opinions and talk a little bit more overly zealous about it, and literally totally disregarding other people's thoughts. So that's something that I found very interesting about the whole thing about what I got from my therapist. So today is definitely going to be an episode basically about boundaries. I hope you guys loved it. So without a further ado, before we close out this segue, I'm going to do a small little story time just to kind of get a little bit from all this boring chit chat that I just did. So let's get started. So for those who don't know me, hi, I'm Skylar, and I am the new host who's doing Skank Planet by myself. I'm not the founder, and I've only temporarily asked for permission to do this on my own for a bit, just so I can revive the series and just keep it afloat until we're able to get guests to come on the show and things like that. So let's get into it, right? Let's see. Can we not talk about just I don't know. Let's just talk about sleep, right? I feel like sleep is something I want to talk about. I don't know. When I sleep, I wake up so many fucking times, and I feel like a lot of it is because in the middle of the night, I'm sitting here recording episodes. I am on my phone playing video games and watching YouTube. I feel like sleep is extremely important, and I feel like getting your natural born 8 hours is extremely important because without those 8 hours, you don't really realize how much of your life you're really like sucking away, like how much energy you're really killing. Like I've had like 2 days ago, I had to go to work, and it dawned on me like I was just tired. Like I'm sitting at the register and I'm just zoning out. Like I literally am just dead. Like there's just no energy. And it's got nothing to do with like, oh, like I'm tired. Or it's like it's got anything to do with like anything. It's just simply that it's like because I'm not getting my full 8 hours, like when I'm at work, it's just like I'm barely even able to stay awake because like when you think about it, you're just I've wasted so much energy. It's like my mental capacity could only take so much. And I've also noticed like lack of sleep just tends to trickle down in my relationships because recently they went outside to Washington Square Park and I couldn't go. Like I just mentally really couldn't go. Like no matter how much they wanted me to go, like physically, I couldn't bring myself to do it. It's just too much. It's too much running up and down. It's just too much stress. It's just something I can't do. And I learned that that's something that's related to not getting good sleep. So I think it's very important. Make sure you're getting enough sleep and prioritize your sleeping schedule. Like, even if you can't sleep well at night, you know, there's a lot of aids that you can do. I personally drink a lot of tea, chamomile tea, and it does help to me to doze off and stay asleep. Stay hydrated and de-stress before going to sleep. So try not to think about too much that you have to deal with about throughout the day. You know, because life is stressful all around, and if you let it consume you, you're gonna realize how terrible that is for your health. Um, so yeah, these are just some of the little things that I wanted to just like make a small intervention about. So yeah, that's just my little story time. Bitch can't sleep, basically. So yeah, before I end this series, end this episode, this series is gonna still keep going. I just wanted to say again, just for those who did not get the memo from the first couple episodes, God, I'm so tired. I will be making more future episodes in the long run. Hopefully for the next episode I can get a guest onto the show just so that we can get a little bit more fun. We can ask some questions, some hot takes, maybe put someone in the hot seat maybe. Just some fun little shit. I want to take this podcast for a turn. Because I feel like just me alone is a little boring. I think half y'all motherfuckers just like hate my voice at this point. JK, but still. So yes. So hopefully you guys are excited. Please comment down in the section below. Just let us know like what we can do better, what some segues you would like to see. And don't forget to subscribe because this series is definitely going to become something new. Before we go, I think we still have like 3 minutes. So I'm going to put a hot take and I want you to tell me what you think about it. So me and my therapist had this argument. And this was something related to just basic shit, right? So we said, if there was a funeral or wedding or birthday party, let's just put like all three, right? Now, say that it's not you that's hosting it. Say it's a friend, right? Say that this individual, you're a friend of this individual and you're transgender, right? This can be male to female or female to male. Now, I'm going to speak on male to female behalf because I do have the right to do so. I am transgender male to female, and I guess I can speak on that perspective. I'm not going to try to go too far on female to male because I'm not well versed in that dimension for me to feel like I can make any kind of meaningful contribution in that sense. but I will try to explain it from their perspective, but in a respectful and mindful mannerism. So basically, if you're a transgender, male to female, and say you're going to a party or a wedding, whatever it's called, if the host insists that they want you to wear a suit, a male suit specifically, despite the fact clearly that you're transgender, and you refusing to do so and not going to the event, does that make it right or wrong? Here's where I stand on this issue. I'm going to say first and foremost, being transgender means that you are diagnosed with a disorder that is part of was once part of the DSM-5, and this was called gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is described as the disconnection between the mind and the body, which can sometimes create stress and debilitating emotional and sometimes physical pain. This pain can sometimes just manifest itself into suicidal thoughts and ideations. This can include, and not limited to, self-harm, lack of appetite, lethargy, and just overall high levels of anxiety and or depression. To me, any individual who is transgender more likely experiences this disorder in varying degrees of intensity. For me, my version of gender dysphoria does put me into a very dark mental space. I wouldn't say it causes me to have any kind of bad thoughts. I'd say it just makes me very, very sad, extremely moody. For me, it's a little bit on the intense scale. So like from 1 to 10, I'm like a 7 out of 10, maybe, for gender dysphoria. I think if I was hosting a party, and it's my birthday, let's say that, and I don't know, I guess like if all my guests, let's say 80% of them are allergic to seafood and I want seafood, I think if I'm hosting something, for my birthday, that I have to be mindful of my guests that I'm inviting, right? Because I can't just take us all to a seafood place, because if some of them are allergic to seafood, I'm putting their health at risk. I'm not saying that I can't have what I want on my birthday. It is my day, but I would acknowledge that my guests don't have to show up. As simple as it is. If they feel like, that the party is not accommodating for them, considering that they're allergic to seafood, they don't have to subject themselves to that pain of showing up to an event that is not accommodating to them and potentially put themselves at risk of like anaphylactic shock or something like that. So I would understand that. And so similarly, I was saying that if you're transgender and the person insists on making you dress in a way that is outside of your gender identity and disregards your mental disorder, which can put you at a very risk of a lot of emotional pain, and then I would say that the event is just not unfortunately, it's just not welcoming for transgender people in generalistic terms. And I wouldn't stress yourself about it. I'd just say, well, do you. If you feel like the emotional pain and turmoil is not worth it, then just do not attend. You're not saying that the person has to change anything about the event for you, but I would say like prioritize your mental health first. Some people in the trans community really did say like, hey, maybe you can just suck it up for a day, but it all depends, because gender dysphoria is a very painful disorder. It's a very painful and debilitating mental disorder. And for some people, it's not easy to just suck it up for 24 hours. In some cases, it could really, really fuck up someone's mind. For me, any prolonged period of time being in a fucking suit will kill me. And I refuse to put myself through that mental torture. So, I don't know. That's just a random segue. I don't fucking know what I'm talking about. It was just a random conversation. I'm pretty sure it has something. I'm pretty sure this shit came up because one of my friends was having like some kind of party, and they were going to their family's party event, and they felt like, I don't know, that they weren't too accepting of them wearing clothing that was like, I guess, in like how they self-identify, I guess. And I guess we just had like a rant about it. I don't fucking know. So let's just like leave this because I really don't know where I got like where this a particular conversation or argument came from, but I still think it's worthwhile to go into it. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Please leave a comment down below how you feel about the scenario that we were arguing about, my friends. What do you think about when it comes to healthy and unhealthy boundaries? And what are some things that you do to maintain having a healthy, or what are some things that you think you could work on that's causing you to have unhealthy boundaries, whether that may be sexual, physical, materialistic, intellectual? Tell me down below, what are some things that you feel like you could work on? So without further ado, this is your host, Skylar Rose, signing off. Bye. Love you. Mwah.